Whoa, long time no see.
Right.
Yeah, really.
We have continued our
Has
tradition.
any has anybody caught up with sleep yet?
No, this is today. It marks the first time I've been in my house for longer than 2 hours since leaving on Wednesday for NABBA last week.
I still haven't finished unpacking my car and my suitcase. So
Yeah, and we yeah, Pat's exempt from this, but we continued our tradition of all three of us being in the same place at the same time, but not being at the same place at the same time.
Yeah, that's true. I saw Amy for 2 seconds, and I got to spend some time with Aaron at
Yeah,
the Hilton
Amy's really the
after a while.
problem.
Yeah, I think so.
You go off and like win first section, and then just you're too good for
Too
anybody
good to hang
else.
out with your
Yeah,
podcast buddies.
Sorry.
I even made the effort to like play in Tony's whole band, and like,
Yeah, he spent time in my band and everything.
Just too busy. We had the youth band, and obviously the two performances, the first section and the youth panel thing and a quintet. This was my busiest NABBA to date.
how the youth feel? They have a good time.
Yeah, they had a great time. I mean, they got third, which I, was expecting, but it wasn't a super far third. You know what I mean? Like it was still,
They were in the game.
they were in the game, and that was the goal.
Did-
Um, I I figured, there were some things that they needed to we need to up our game with, but and some of the things were just things that we can't really control. We only had one tuba, and he was a middle schooler, so having more tubas makes a massive difference, because that added bass just makes everything sound bigger.
I mean, you had a really young band to start with too, compared to
Yeah,
some.
we have an 11-year-old, we have two 12-year-olds. We were the only ones
Ooh.
with middle schoolers in the youth brass band that were competing in
Yeah.
the youth open. So I'm super proud of them. I can, while I'm watching them back there, they're all like huddled together, like making sure that their counts are together and everything back there in the third cornets. So I'm really proud of them. They were, we had some tough stuff that they learned. They had never seen as many flats as were in our one piece before. They had never seen some of the time signatures that we were playing in. And they learned, and they did it.
Did
So
you rehearse with them in Fort Wayne at all?
no, they showed up, and we saw them all in the warm-up room. I just don't know logistically, because a lot of the parents didn't want to stay overnight in Fort Wayne. So getting them out there same day and then finding a rehearsal space, because a lot of the kids, I think two or three of them were doing the youth, like
Reading
whatchamacallit.
band, the reading
Yeah,
band.
the reading band. And so with them doing the reading band, that would have taken away any time, like immediately before. And then if you go too far earlier, then a lot of the kids wouldn't be able to make it out there in time. And then funny enough, we had a few kids who gave up on prom to be at NABBA. So
Really.
there was one who played and then like immediately afterward was like, okay, I gotta go back because I gotta go to prom.
That's fair enough. That's fair enough.
Yeah,
I skipped my senior prom to play in the pit orchestra Music Man, believe it or not.
yeah. So they have been bit by the bug. They are ready to go for next year, and hopefully, we'll have a bit more of a fuller ensemble. We had a few spots that were just a little bit sparse, and so I had a trombonium, a euphonium. That was it. We had a euphonium part for a little section there, because the trombones of just crazy. Our trombones are quiet. I don't know how that happened, but they were quiet. So the euphonium kind of
Disgusting.
boosted them a little
Disgusting.
bit. I don't even know how that works. Quiet trombones. What's that?
Well, that's great.
Yeah.
Well, I want to hear, especially if you got a chance to talk to Lucy after it about how Ghost of Industry came off for her.
She was professional Lucy and not friend Lucy. So
Oh, that's
I
too
got very
bad.
little. I got very little. She said that she absolutely loved being able to hear all of the different interpretations. I told her that the Dublin Silver's goal, at least, was to tell a story with our performance, and she said that we absolutely succeeded in that. I mean, we had members that went over to the UK for the premiere and then traveled to Lucy's hometown so that they could tour it and understand better what what she was talking about with these places and kind of the essence of what makes them them. So we did a really deep dive in trying to represent this. So that was really rewarding. Um, but yeah, she was being professional Lucy and not friend Lucy, so I didn't get much out of her.
I talked to her briefly and kind of got the same thing, just, to hear the vastly different eight interpretations, which are now all posted on YouTube individually. So they're in a playlist. So I may just like listen to that playlist driving to work some over the next week or so.
Yeah, that's man, that's really cool. I'm glad what took 2 years or more, a little over 2 years to get this to actually happen. And so it was really cool to finally to happen.
Yeah.
I always wonder with like, especially in the situation like contest situation, like if you're the composer and you're listening to just a blitzkrieg of your own piece back to back to back to back to back, two things. One, do you get tired of your own piece? But then two, um, you know, do you start to wonder like with something where there's so many interpretations? Is it something like, you know what, maybe I should be more specific about what I say here? Or like, do I change the marking because or like, do you hear like ideas and you're like, you know what, maybe I'll adjust that? Or, that wasn't what I was going for, but I like this better. I wonder if like you let that live and breathe and adjust and I'm sure each composer has their own question to this, but I've always wondered that like, if you're sitting there listening to it and you're like, oh man, every single I don't know, euphonium player played that note really short. Let me put a tenuto on top of it in the next publication or something. I'm curious if that's a thing or if you just like, nope, it's gone. Let the masses have it.
Or even if it's like, wow, I liked how that one band did it, even though I didn't write it in there. I should add that to the part.
Yeah, yeah, right.
That conductor's a genius. I should have thought of that.
We'll have to have some composers on here and get their opinions, you know. I mean, part of me feels like there are times when like I'll write a paper or something, like a big paper, and I'll find something and like, oh, I could have done that better. I could have explained that better. I'm like, it's out there. It's in the world now. And I kind of am like done. Whenever there's a big project, I kind of feel like it's done.
I remember going back to my dissertation for something and going, did I write that? It's like I do not remember writing that because you're like so stressed at the moment and just trying to get everything in there.
Yeah. I found it was a stupid small error in my dissertation, but there's a part where Jan Bach goes around the circle of fifths in his euphonium concerto. It's in the last movement. If you're curious, anyone can find it. Like have a contest. Can anyone find where Jan Bach goes around the circle of fifths in 12 measures in the third movement? Anyway, but I made like the chart and everything in the chart was off by one box. And I was like,
Oh no.
How did the committee let that go?
because they did. I'm sure they didn't check my theory. They were just like, eh. I'm
Oops.
sure they would have caught it in a second if they checked my theory. But it wasn't like anyone who looked at it would be able to look at it and be like, oh, she means that it's modulating here, and then they just see that it all was just one box over.
Right.
But that would have been nice for someone to be like, hey, just knock everything over one box on your chart.
Well,
Yeah.
Pat, tell us about how your weekend was as your last president running this nut job show.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be, I'm glad you folks invited me on here because it'll probably be the last time I get the opportunity to do this with you folks because I go back into seclusion, so to speak. But just, a lot of things and you see more and more, not only the work that goes into the contest, but even after the contest, like, oh, we're done now. Now we're reviewing judges' scores and judges' tapes and doing evaluations and surveys have gone out to bands and we'll be crunching those numbers and, all sorts of other things. So even when it's over and you want a sigh of relief, it's not over yet. But the weekend, it was just great to see people that you don't get to see all the time. And especially, I felt like Thursday is when I got to see the most people because then it got busy. Amy, I think I might have seen you and Lucy on Thursday. I saw Kerno, who was excited to know that he got to see his test piece 12 times again. So another composer getting to watch their piece. But then just, getting to sit backstage, just see some of the excitement. The electricity in the auditorium Saturday night with the championship section was just amazing. I did miss some of Saturday because I had to run an errand. But I did catch a lot Friday. I tried to catch some of the clinics as well. Obviously, I was there for the youth one with you, and I thought, the insight you and Lee provided was just great. And hopefully, we can share more of that. Kind of hoping to see like what's the next step for the clinics. Do we start having people apply to do some presentations or master classes or things? Depending on what solo judges in, do we have some master classes there? But the panel discussions were a good, safe way, I think, to start doing a lot more professional development, and I heard they went really well. They seem to be pretty well attended as well, at least a couple dozen people at each one. So that's pretty exciting. And then just all the bands, a lot of music over the weekend, and the Pearl Arts Center seemed to be a pretty good venue as well, which was nice. I don't know, just a little overwhelming sometimes, and you know that rush at the end. I know last year I got a lot of criticism for the award ceremony going too long. So I tried to speed it up a little bit, and it seemed to have gone over pretty well. And we still do it so much quicker than we did 10 years ago. Oh my gosh.
Oh, by like an hour and 10 minutes.
I know. I know. But even getting, people with, Mark Taylor, Dave Jones, and Jan Duga all getting to say their piece as well. It still went pretty quickly as we went through it.
Yeah, I mean it was great.
Yeah, Pat, I think I
Go
saw
ahead.
you Thursday, like in passing,
Yeah.
and then I saw you after the competition. Like, and nothing in between, like at all. Just the bookends. Like I saw you before it like technically started. Like I think I was walking down the hall, and I saw you going into like check on a fire or something like
I
that.
think you were coming into the Hilton and I was leaving the
Some
Hilton.
along those lines. Yeah, yeah. Before I stood outside of the boardroom meeting and was making funny faces at all my board member friends. And then I'm not kidding, that 100% happened. Um and like Daisy made the mistake of sitting like right in eye shot. And so I grabbed a bunch of UF alumni and we came over. We're like, while you all were doing very important business. And then yeah, the hang with the Canadians after. That was pretty much it.
Are you an honorary Canadian or something? Like,
God, I wish. I've been applying for a lot of jobs in Canada, and a lot of my in-laws are in Canada. So we're like,
oh, okay.
we end up over there. But also just like Rob's great, good people. That euphonium section is just him and Karina are just cool people, a lot of fun, and we've been digital friends for a decade or more now. And so any opportunity I get to see them, they haven't been to NABBA's, since it's been in Huntsville. So.
And I go back because I went to that Hannaford Festival about 20 years ago, and I went maybe 3 out of 4 or 5 years in a row, and got to make friends with quite a few of the Weston people. So
Because there was 3 Canadian ensembles, is that correct?
yeah, Aurelia was kind of a new return, I think. Weston and Upper Canada.
But San Francisco still has the record for furthest distance, right? For everybody.
Yeah. Nobody has to go as far as them.
Well, for this weekend, I mean, I think Hawthorne competed in '94 from Australia, but
Oh, yeah. Yeah,
No,
Stavanger came over one time. Yeah. Yeah.
and the test piece they won on, I think now is a test piece for the Nationals, the one that they won on it
The
now.
Gregson,
The Gregson
the
Symphony.
Gregson 2 Symphony. Yeah.
That was Grand Rapids, though, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think so.
That was
There's
my
a
first.
couple
That
of,
was my first NABBA. My first one
yeah.
ever. Baby me.
And I'll get to
No.
hang out with some of them in about a month as I head over to the European Brass Band Championships.
And Tony,
Yeah.
it was really cool getting to go through a band's first NABBA again. Like sitting inside of that. That was really fun. Um, the warm-up room was the most anxiety I have felt in some time. There's a picture. I guess one of the members is like actually a photographer, and they were walking around and taking photos of everybody or something. They had a nice camera, and we got these photos back later. And me and Ryan, the guy who subbed on baritone, were laughing because he and I are looking at the camera. We're like, we're all smiles, and everyone around us is like looking at their music and like oiling valves and like freaking out. And I've never heard Tony get like so many like, can I have water on stage? Like so many like, and just I remember being there, 4 years ago or whatever, and like watching those people, that happened in that organization and how much that chills out. But it was funny, but also like the third section situation because we are planning on taking our third section band next year. So it was nice. I'm glad I got to see that before I go through that on your side of things.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's the third section is still the unique one that has to play the test piece and the choice piece on the same program. So there's a little bit of a different, you know, mindset where and one of the things you can't really prepare for is that when you get done playing the test piece, you have to wait until the judges are ready for you to start the choice piece because they have to completely finish their wrap up on the test piece, put those scores in, and then clear their mind and consider the choice piece in a separate way, which is very difficult to do. But for us, it ended up working out pretty cool because there was a lot of silence in there while we just waited, and it kind of that silence set the mood for the beginning of Dark Side of the Moon, so that when we started to play that, it actually, the scene was was already kind of set, so it created a nice beginning for that.
Also on the player end of things, it gives you time to kind of like shake the brain, etch a sketch as the
Yeah.
manager speak. You know what I mean? And like kind of like, okay, I got done with that. Let's think about this one.
Yeah, and not for something completely different.
Right. Right.
Well, Amy and you and I were in the open sections, so we didn't have to worry about the pause in between because it was just the one score since there's no set piece.
Yeah, we did for the youth. Holy cow, that was a brand new experience for me. Because we got back there and into the instrument room. And first off, I was like, sweet, no one forgot their music. And then our second trombone player came up and he was like, something's wrong.
Actually,
And he's like, I opened up my folder and my music is not in there. I was like, okay. And I had all of our music, in my bag. And I was like, okay, we'll go through the music and we'll grab out your parts. So I grab out the parts for Queen of the Underworld, and it's ready to go. And then I go into Malika, our other piece that we are playing, and there's no part for him. And I was like, what happened to this part? And he was like, I grabbed it out for rehearsal the other week.
And then lost it again.
And then lost it again.
the other week. Also.
Yeah, and then our percussionist for DSB left, but our percussionists are so efficient and so much in their routine that they took off with the mallet bag that we were planning on borrowing and a few of the smaller auxiliary percussion stuff.
Aww.
And so the triangle system and the instant band were very generous and let us borrow stuff. Because I was like, we have no small percussion and no mallets. But it was, I mean, and I can't blame them because for years and years and years, there obviously was no youth brass band to be at NABBA. They weren't going to be there, and so they're so efficient with packing things up the same way, and so they took off. And so we're like, my one of the coaches was creating a part from the score. We took the tuba part for the bass trombone part and created a part. Thankfully, Malika was shorter than our main feature piece, and so she's creating the score while I'm going back and forth and grabbing percussion equipments, from different bands and writing down who we're borrowing what from. And then there's the kids, kind of wide-eyed and kind of, freaking out too. But it all worked out. And we got all the percussion back to all the bands that loaned it to us. It was
Now,
all
both
good.
your pieces were written specifically for your group by
Yes.
members, well, at least a member and a former member of DSB, correct?
Yes. So our we commissioned Malaika, which means angel in Swahili. We did a partnership with Brass for Children, which is a youth brass band in Uganda, this term. And so the kids kind of I asked them like if there's a song that like everyone knows, and they said Malaika. It's been made into like tons of different like pop versions, and like it's been around for a long time. And so we made our own version. Bob Munson wrote a version, and he put a few tricky bits in there so that it wasn't just like melody, alone. That we had bell tone, stacked chords, and we had stuff like that to make it interesting in different sections. But they learned over at Brass for Children, they learned our national anthem, and they kind of learned a little bit about us, and we learned a little bit about them. So it was a really cool partnership. And if anybody wants, Bob and I talked, and if anybody wants a copy of Malaika, it's an easy and short African kind of folk song. For a donation, you can have it, and then we'll send that money over to Brass for Children. And then also, Queen of the Underworld was our test piece. We commissioned that from Chris Hines, who is a big drum corps guy who lives in the area and used to play with DSB. And he just nailed it. The kids absolutely love that piece, and it's fun to listen to. He wrote a piece that's fun to listen to, that's fun to play, and right in that like level of difficulty for youth open. And it's fantastic. He's going to be working with Lucy Pankhurst to get it published. And Lucy's already played some recordings for some youth brass bands over in the UK, so I think they'll get some performances of that pretty soon. He has a few adjustments to make because we didn't have a SOP part written in because we don't have a SOP. So why write a SOP part? And we put there was a tuba solo, but we put that in the B flat bass instead of E flat because we didn't have an E flat bass. So we're gonna and there was a percussion break that she advised him to cut it down a bit because it went a little bit long. Imagine the DCI guy making a long, big
Drum
percussion
break.
beat.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he has a few little things to adjust, and then he's going to meet up and we're going to get this thing published. So that's exciting, especially like when you take on a project like this, and then underneath, Queen of the Underworld, it'll say, for the Dublin Youth Brass Band. So that'll be really cool.
And Pat, you did the Instaband stuff, right?
Did, yeah.
How was that? I mean, you had a pretty good solo euphonium player.
Yeah, he was all right.
All right.
Solo youth from the President's Zone. It was interesting because, even 2 weeks before, we're like, are we gonna have enough players for this? And so I played bass trombone, which I probably played more bass trombone the past week than I have the past 4 years, 5 years.
Lifetime. Yeah.
And then the solo trombone was a solo youth player from Florida, I think. And then the second trombone playing it on a baritone was the solo cornet from Austin Brass Band. So the trombone section was a little makeshift. The rest of the band, I think, was pretty solid. We had one percussionist that just was amazing. He covered every part. I don't know how he did it. And
It's
then
not the most brass band statement though.
yeah,
The trombone section was a little makeshift, but everything else worked out.
um, but it was, I think, one of the things that was nice in one of the goals we had in bringing that back is like the Grind City Brass Band couldn't bring their whole band, but they had a quintet in the ensemble contest, and the entire quintet played with the group. We had three people from Western Reserve, so to have like these chunks of people from different bands getting to interact, getting to get experience the contest and go, oh yeah, this is really cool. Now we got to get the rest of the band. I think, that's part of the goal. I know there was somebody from Rockville there because their band couldn't make it.
Yeah,
And
Orchid
then,
City's group
we
went.
had kind of the two standard pieces, Ravenswood and mid through all the mid traffic, whatever, Shenandoah. But then
Yeah.
Jessica did arrangement slash transcription of this overture that was written by a female composer maybe like 100 years ago,
Ethel
and it
Smith,
was kind of
wasn't it?
it was kind of like a C sort of thing, and it was a fun piece to play. Really, for the instant band, that was challenging. More sharps than I usually play in a brass band. Well, I guess it was bass clef, so
I was
that's
gonna
something
say,
I did well. Um, but it was a lot of fun just getting to know the people there and hang out. And Evan did a great job conducting. We rehearsed Thursday night, Friday morning, Friday night, and then a brief rehearsal Saturday morning, which was mostly singing because we didn't want to blow our chops. I felt bad for the soprano player having to play that much over the few days, but the guys had amazing stamina.
I thought you
But it was,
said
it
you
was
felt
just a
bad
lot of
because they had to
fun.
sing the notes.
Well, it was a lot of fun. It served the purpose. Something maybe that's to look at in the future is, maybe as we look at, you talked about new commissions, Amy, maybe NABBA should be commissioning some new works for that band because if it's in the open section, they can do whatever they want, and that's a good way to get some opportunity going. Um, but I imagine most of the people that went there are going to want to do it again if their band doesn't come. And for me, I'm even like, should I join a brass band again for next year or just play with the instant band because it was that much fun? Um,
Yeah, it's going to be bigger next year and much better,
It is going to be bigger. I've already heard from people who
Yeah.
couldn't make it to NABBA, and now they have a reason like to make it to NABBA because they have something that they can do other than just like sit in the hall and listen. They have something that they can participate in.
well, and if you're a music teacher or music educator and you need to get off of school and get professional development for it, now that we have all these clinics, you spend 10 hours in rehearsal, you spend 5 hours at clinics, and you're already up to your 15 hours you need for the Vandercook credit, or you can just do it as CEUs in the
Mhm.
future. So I think, growing the conference side, professional side of NABBA this year, Jessica knocked it out of the park because she was in charge of the clinics and the instant band. So
She did great. She worked herself into a flu, you know. But here's a funny story: is that Jessica picked me up from the airport on Thursday um, because the time that my flight came in kind of had me arriving at the same time as some judges, and I arranged to pick up from some of the old Crown people. But I was like, well, I can't ride with the judge who arrived at the same time, but Jessica was going at the same time to pick up Evan. So I get it, and I haven't met Evan, and I saw his name on some of the planning stuff, but that lived with Jessica, so I wasn't paying much attention to it. So I get in the car, and Evan's there, and Jessica's there, and I was like, "Hey, I'm Tony." He goes, "I'm Evan." I was like, "Oh, Evan, where are you from?" He goes, "Chapel Hill," and I was like, "North Carolina?" He goes, "Yeah, Chapel Hill, North Carolina." I was like, "What?" I was like, "I'm from Raleigh. What do you?" He goes, "I said, what do you do in Chapel Hill?" He goes, "Oh, I teach the orchestra at UNC." I was like, are you kidding me? I was like, I work at UNC. Like we literally work one building apart from each other. I was like, I never put the connection together that because Evan did a band at NABBA last year or the year
Arkansas,
before.
yeah.
Yeah, so I never put the connection to do that. The orchestra director at UNC had a brass band connection because who would who would put that connection together? So it was really funny. So like, oh wow, come all this way just to meet you when I could have met you on campus.
Yeah, I think it's interesting too. Sometimes we get so into, oh, we have to find brass banders to do these things. But he's an orchestra guy and does a fantastic job with brass banding. So
Well,
we just got
Sal
to find good
Scarpa's an
musicians
orchestra
sometimes.
guy. Sal Scarpa's background is orchestra, ballet, opera, and jazz. It's like his whole Sal Scarpa's like whole background is like just everything that you could be in outside of brass band. And then
I feel like
somehow-
anybody who's on a trivia team with Sal has an unfair advantage. That
yeah,
man knows so much about everything.
yeah. Have you heard him, like you've heard him do his thing before?
I'm just like, I'll mention a movie and he'll tell me everything about it. Like
Yeah.
he's a walking Wikipedia.
He is.
He's the guy you don't want to play the original Trivial Pursuit with because he'll get all the pink squares that nobody can get.
Yeah.
God,
Absolutely.
I haven't thought about Trivial Pursuit in a decade.
More. Yeah.
Yeah, that used to be every Thanksgiving we'd play Trivial Pursuit back in the day.
And then my mother and I just get competitive over Monopoly. And
I hate Monopoly so bad. I hate Monopoly.
The contest felt like a proper brass band contest because it felt like we were in Edinburgh the whole time. Just rainy and muggy, and I liked it. It was great. It was a break for me. I was like, oh, I can like walk around and not die. This is great.
And it snowed. It was raining, and there was some snow flurries on Sunday morning too.
Was it really?
Yeah, it wasn't enough to make anything interesting, but it still was like, is that snow flurries?
Well,
Like,
I mean,
it's April.
I don't understand because I was not of the right mind when I was leaving on Sunday. So I went to bed at like 3 because I was talking to Tony that whole evening. And then I come back down and there he is right where I left him.
Yeah,
Still
I got an hour
just
and a half of sleep.
Just
I got
talking
an hour
to
and a half of
people.
sleep. Yeah, it was not good. I'm too old for all nighters, and I got an hour and a half of sleep, and I'm
Talking to Central
Still
Florida
not-
guys.
Where
Yeah,
were you
I'm
guys
still not-
hanging out?
the
Hilton.
Hilton.
Yeah. We were all
Weston and Central Florida over there, so that was
It was
kind
funny,
of
man. When you first walked into that building, like right at like, I don't know, like 11:30, right before the alcohol really started flowing. No one in that area won, like, or placed. Right. And so you thought initially, and everybody kind of got over the initial hurt, but like you thought initially you were at a funeral. Like it was like, like I just walk in with zero sensitivity. I'm like, whoa, we're a hotel full of losers.
That's so you. Break the tension right
And
there.
because we all were like 6th, 7th, or like 7th, 8th, 9th places. Like we're all just like,
Yeah.
but win or lose, we're gonna booze, baby. Let's do that.
Well, by the
you
time
know-
I got there, everybody was feeling pretty good. So that was good.
Well, the
move.
Canadians brought some really good whiskey.
They had done particularly well. I think Weston most of the times they had come to Fort Wayne before, like
Mhm.
podium finishes. But one
And they
of the
do
things
well at
they
the other competitions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
they
the last,
recognized that since 2019, bands have gotten that much better.
That's the
Yep.
problem.
yeah, they seem to have stayed the same in the first section as advanced. So they're getting ready to, I guess, ramp up and. All right, well, I guess we're gonna have to work now.
Yeah, just looking at like the test piece selections for my second section folks from even like 2015 compared, like those would not fly now. Like they're just not hard enough.
Yeah.
In comparison. Yeah, because I've been, I'm looking for our next one. We're already, picking or whatever, and it's frustrating competing with it because we're getting so much better as an ensemble through this competition, but dag nabbit, so is everybody else.
They're not supposed to get better too.
Yeah, you all stay the same, so we can move on. No, it's genuinely great. But we think about the second section that we came into versus the second section that we're competing against now, and it's just
Right.
night and day.
Yeah.
Which is like next year's Legacy by Tom Daverin for your section.
Dude,
Yeah.
that piece is so cool. It's so
a very
freaking
cool piece. Very cool piece.
I and don't get me wrong, I love James Colonel to death, Albinus or whatever. But I'm like, oh, thank God it's not like a Salvation Army theme of variations. Like it's like something a little spicier than that. Though my conductor came up with this amazing story, like for Blade and the hymn and the mode that it was set and like what this means and like how he's using it, and it's interesting. And then he runs into Kernow in the elevator with my people and just got the biggest like artistic letdown ever because he was like yeah, so I was talking about this or whatever, what was your, and then he's like, what was the inspiration for making the piece? And he's like, I got paid. Like I got commissioned. and I wanted to write something cool. And like my director was like, because we did the Patriots as our own choice, which has a pretty story to it. Like there's a lot of story to it. And so we were trying to keep that with Lane, and for James Curnow to go, no.
Oh.
And Curnow leaves the elevator. I look at the MD and I'm just like, I like your story better.
Well,
We're just gonna stick with that.
I think on the opposite side, like I think Atlantic and their choice piece, they played Revelation. And there's like a huge, it's like all of these aleatoric, like people, going about their life and everything. And then this euphonium solo that's like God speaking. And it was like one of Wilby's, Sal was working with Wilby, and like, he said that it was one of his favorite pieces he'd ever written, and nobody plays it and everything. And so, there's this huge like story behind it. It's programmatic. It has this grand, just scope to it. And then, it's not written. It's a horrible piece for a competition, but they played it.
Yeah.
instead of the interpretation being no, it's like the judges are like, no. I think they kind of they knew that it was going to be a little bit of a competition, like suicide.
Yeah.
But
if the championship section in general
gorgeous
felt
piece.
so much more conceptual in general this year,
Yeah.
if you know what I mean by that word, like it was, I mean, there were very few pieces that was like, we're gonna sit down and play a very hard piece of music, and it was like this thing. There was a lot of like solo ideas and offstaging and playing flugel into a tuba and like all sorts of weird stuff. And like, I think it's cool. But like my solo trombone, this was his first NABBA ever, and he just leans over. He's like, I love how these championship pieces just add stuff to add stuff.
I will. It's funny that you mentioned that, because
That's a
I
good way
do
of putting
think
it.
that was probably the most degrading use of a tuba in a featured solo position I've ever seen.
He was sitting right there, right? And it looks like he's about to play like the
Right.
Vaughan Williams tuba concerto or something for
Right.
everybody.
And,
And so I was like,
"Bruh."
I was looking at everybody. I was like, if I was in his chair, I would be peeing myself right now. Like, there's no amount of beta blockers that I could force in my face to make me feel comfortable with the situation.
Yeah,
And then he
I'm
just
like-
wiggled the third valve.
While the good dude played in his bell, I was like, that is so embarrassing, man. How could he let him like that? It's wrong.
By the way,
The
speaking
tuba
of
made it sound better.
championship section test pieces, now that the secret's out, that Uncharted Lands, it says J. Thomas Banks in the program, but it was written by Justin Eubanks from Central Florida.
Brother.
That's amazing. Like, to think he put that piece together.
You want to hear something
And,
even wilder?
Yeah.
He doesn't have a music degree. He's just like, he has just been playing in that band since like high school. I've known him for like the whole time. Dude, that piece, I told him after I saw him, I was like, that is not the last time we will hear this piece. That thing was really cool. Definitely a crowd favorite too, I felt.
Yeah, if you haven't heard it, it's on the YouTube channel right now. So
The euphonium solo, man. And I was in the hall listening, and the euphonium solo started, and I was like, I know this sound. I know. And I was like, is that Sally? And I was like, and then the youth band kids were with me, and they were like, do you know every euphonium player? And I just looked at them. I was like,
Yep.
pretty much.
Pretty much. Pretty much.
Yeah, I didn't
And
realize
they
it
all
until
know me.
I didn't realize it until one of my bandmates said something, but I was like, because they were like, how can you stay and listen to all these championship section bands? Like, you're not going to go like grab dinner or something really fast. And I was like, I want to support my friends. And I realized I have a friend in every friggin' championship section, at least one in every friggin' band. And like, I literally, Weston Silver was the only first section band I could make, because I literally rolled out of bed. They were at 8:25 on Saturday. I was able to roll out of bed in Birkenstocks and everything. This is my favorite part about NABBA. The whole organization thing right now is that hotel, I could do this. I literally was able to put on Birkenstocks, walk down, watch a choice piece, and then go back up and take a shower. It was like, it's a 5-minute commute from my hotel room to the embassy. That I like a lot.
It was like
And
going
it's all
down, getting
indoors.
some eggs and taking it back up to your room.
It was just like it took me. I literally was able to get a coffee from Starbucks and drink it while I watched their own choice, and then go back, and then found out that they had a cup mute that I wanted, and so I stole a cup mute from the Canadians for our own choice. We had two separate. We had a Wallace and we had another cup mute, and I did not like the other cup mute at all. So when I saw that Rob had Wallace mutes, I was like, hey, and of course in pure Rob fashion, I'm like, hey, can I borrow a mute? And he's like, oh yeah, sure, whatever you need. Let's go get it right now. Let's do this. Like he was like, like, he was like. Didn't even answer. Like he didn't even ask like the why or whatever. He was just like, yeah, here, borrow this thing for the day.
The weird thing about this venue though was the walk across the street. Like to go from the hall across to the warm-up room, there was no way to make that not
We
awkward.
found that if you Karened enough with the chauffeurs from the venue, they would let you go across the escalators and go around. Night 2, we complained a lot so that we
You
didn't
didn't-
have to go out in the rain.
This is kind of fun.
Oh man, the
Oh.
suspense for whatever
Taking
he's
you
saying right now.
indoors.
All right,
You
you
just
froze. You froze. What did you say? You said
Oh.
this is kind of.
Oh, it's kind of funny because like it's funny how people are like, no, we want to go out in the rain. No, take us indoors. Go up the escalator, take us around. They all knew to do that. Everybody could have done that. Even if it wasn't raining, they could have done that.
Well, the first night it was no, or the
It
first
wasn't
morning
raining.
there was no rain, but the second one there was rain, so
Right.
they complained about it. But also, we're not Floridians. We're not used to stairs. Like we don't have a lot of 2-story buildings, or you can't go underneath stages because you'd hit water. So we're not used to these things.
Yeah, but I
But-
would like after Andrew Sally played that solo, I was like, I gotta go like congratulate him. So I went outside because I was like, they're gonna come out through this door, and then they ended up going further down to go out another door. So I'm already outside, and I'm doing this like awkward walk like along where they're walking like outside, and like I'm just like, oh my gosh, this is way more complicated than I thought. Just like stepping outside and be like, hey, great job. Now I'm like walking like down the block.
But I did like that you could go outside and like yay, outside,
that
and
was
you're
fun.
not in anybody's way.
Yeah, that was nice.
Like you're not in anybody's way to get to concessions or get into the venue or anything like that. Because I felt like in Huntsville, everybody developed this symptom of let me stand in an open doorway.
Yeah, a little bit.
But no, I thought it was a good fun weekend. I don't think I'm going to volunteer to take the equipment truck for my band next year. I think I'll delegate that.
It's a long drive.
It's a little, well, also tornadoes or whatever we're going across the country didn't help things either. We had to park in Murfreesboro and just wait. We
Yeah,
didn't
those
we're gonna
storms
drive through
Wednesday
that.
and Thursday night were wild. I
Yeah.
think they even said they got hail in Fort Wayne.
We had to divert on our way back. We ended up like driving an hour, and then there was just like an ocean in the middle of like some Ohio or Kansas. I don't know.
Well, I mean,
some
the
flyover
Ohio-
state.
Some
The Ohio
or
River is
Kansas. Did
major
you just say
flooded.
I don't
some
know.
Ohio. Or
Yeah,
Kansas?
something that some state that doesn't matter. This is one of those ones that people go through to get to Disney.
This is coming from the guy who, after staying at our house for like a week, he was
I
like,
did enjoy
like
my time in
Ohio.
I did
like
enjoy
Ohio."
my time in Columbus. I shouldn't talk smack. I did enjoy Columbus a lot. And heck, a certain band has an opening in Michigan that a few of us are applying for. So, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
We have some
You might-
spice to talk about.
I think you're applying to a few different positions.
Don't worry about that. It's too much spice for this podcast. Pat's already here. He's spicy enough.
I know things. All right.
But anybody who got anything, say your piece about NABBA 2025. It was a good time. I took away. I noticed a couple things, and I don't know and maybe it's because I'm daft, or maybe it's because it's happening. But I felt like I noticed a couple shifts in American brass banding this weekend in specific. This isn't one of them, but I've never heard every band in most sections. The bands I was able to hear were very close to each other in terms of like playing ability. Like I did not envy the judges for championship section in any capacity. Like that seems hard because they everybody played really well, and that's not me to be like, yeah, good team player, like genuinely.
Well,
But
Five
it's
Lakes, Dallas, and James Madison were all within 0.7 points.
yeah. So, but it seems like it seems like you can, especially lower sections, we used to be able to get away with this a lot. You cannot get away with having a trumpet cornet sound. Like the characteristic sound is now expected, and you can't get away with it anymore. You cannot
Yeah.
have cornets coming in with like Bach 3G mouthpieces and or whatever in the world. And then also the tenor horn is like starting like every band, like you can no longer have a tenor horn section that's doing their best. Like it has to be a characteristic sound and like it felt like this NABBA in specific, it was like, no, these like all of these players are coming out and like the top bands in every section, especially in the lower sections, like these instruments are sounding the way they're supposed to. The Americanization of things is starting to go away a little bit. I don't know if you all
Yeah.
felt that way too. I just happened to observe it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a good observation. I think, you know, there's a lot of bands have made the commitment to bring over people from Europe to advise and train. There's a lot of conductors that are coming over here a lot to work with bands. So, people are learning how, to develop more, I'll say authentic brass band approaches that are closer to what they do and the approaches over there. So they're transitioning away from an American community band type or wind band approach to the stylistic characteristics of playing, and I think it's paying off. A lot of people are really catching on.
And we're also seeing a lot more people here go over there to hear things either individually or with their bands. I mean, even already hearing what Five Lakes going into the Swiss Open, I think.
Yeah, Atlantic was at the Scottish Open,
Yeah, there's a handful of people
brass in concert.
from my band who are thinking about going to brass in concert just to go for fun.
I think
Like
San
just
Francisco might be going to Kerkrata along with somebody else, but I can't
ooh,
remember who.
ooh. This is a lot of fun. Any other
That's
major
a long trip.
takeaways before we fill up my computer with data?
Pat, you have anything?
Now, I just want to say thanks for the opportunity to call me in here, and I appreciated the opportunity of being able to lead the organization for 2 years, and look forward to what keeps improving. I think the organization keeps improving. When you think of the fact that um, how much is done not just about the contest, but everything else, it kind of amazes me. I mean, if you go back 20 years ago, there'd be like 13 bands and maybe the NABBA bridge, and that's it. And now there's a lot more ideas of ways to help build that community more, people getting to the regional events. So it's not just we're seeing each other once a year. We might be seeing each other 2 or 3 times a year, which is, I think, a lot of the fun. When I lived in England, you get to see people at all the various different contests they had throughout the year and get to know them. So just looking forward to seeing what the future is and not having to work the contest weekend.
And
Yeah,
stop acting like you're not going to be invited to this podcast just because you're not in the organization anymore. It's not like
right.
you're not really
Yeah,
good
me
friends
too.
with all of us here. Like
Yeah, I think one of the things that I would like to say is that it's really appreciated by the people who are running the contest um, how nice and forgiving some like the players have to be. That like it's a huge thing if you think about it. There were 1,300 plus people that performed over the weekend, and there were probably 30 or so in the embassy alone, 30 performances or 31 or 32 performances on both days, Friday and Saturday. The the amount of percussion that had to be moved, the amount of people that had to just shuffle there and here, and it wasn't flawless. There were annoying things that happened, and overall, everybody just kind of rolled with it. They're very forgiving and appreciative, and I don't think it would happen without that. Ron Lutterby was at the embassy all day, both days. He heard every single band that played in there. He helped them get their stuff set up. He worked his tail off. And it's a tough gig, and and to have such, a good attitude from everybody that's there and appreciative of the help that they're and providing this, this unique, um, you know, experience for them. It's really cool, that everybody is accepting of the challenges that go into planning this. And it always blows me away at the end of it. They were like, well, wait, we did this big thing and none of us are getting paid to do it. It's all volunteer. It's astounding what the dedication of the people on the NABBA board do, and how the NABBA members and the performers all, you know, keep a good spirit and a good head about it, even though there's a lot of emotion and there's a lot of investment and things go wrong. And sometimes it sucks when, one thing goes wrong for this band and it rolls off the back and everyone's really cool about it. So, yeah, it was awesome. I appreciate that as somebody who's planned his last contest.
About you, Amy? Final takeaways?
Um, I'm trying
I think Amy's just trying to stay away from us all.
Oh, there was a meltdown going on outside the office door, so I was muted for a while. I think all of what you guys have said is great. That the movement is growing, and it's, even since I moved back from the UK and kind of got involved in this stuff, it's been getting bigger. I mean, we played. Atlantic played Red Priest, and then I returned with it in the first section, which is crazy. And so I think everything is. I'm combining my thoughts right now. Everything is just getting bigger, and I tell people, I've got what I'm going to say. Everything is getting bigger, and we look at the arts and music, and people keep saying that like ensembles are disappearing and live music is dying out and stuff like that. But if you look at brass banding in North America, it is getting consistently bigger. It is going up in trend. And I was already working with several bands to kind of get them started. And even after NABBA, more people are reaching out to just kind of have someone to kind of mentor them through the process of starting even more brass bands. There's going to be a few play-ins in Ohio in the next few months, probably. There's another youth brass band being established in the state. There's so much stuff happening. That is really kind of cool to be part of a movement that is getting bigger. And so it kind of to get sappy real fast. I mean, it kind of gives you hope for like live music. Like this is getting bigger, and this is a community led movement of people who are turning towards intergenerational music and lifelong music making as a community. So to see this rising, I really, one of my big things is lifelong music making, and that's what's happening here, and that's going up. So if it means fewer people are putting their instrument in the case after high school and never touching it again, like this is a success. This is great.
That's a great point. Great point.
All right. Well, I've dropped my glasses, which I think means it's dinner time.
It means it's over.
Yes,
It's over.
That's what they say. The podcast isn't done until the glasses have been dropped. But thank you all. Hey, Pat, thank you so much for joining us today. And you act like we won't see you again, but we'll see you probably
We will.
next week when I can't show up or something. So have a good one.